Sophia Whitmore slammed her champagne glass down so hard the stem cracked right in front of 400 people. The ballroom went silent. Her eyes locked on the man standing across the room, a stranger in an ill-fitting blazer, holding a name card with her name on it, clearly as confused as everyone else. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone thought it was funny. But what happened next, what that man said to her in the next 60 seconds, would unravel everything Sophia had spent 15 years building around herself. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. The night started the way every charity gala started for Sophia Whitmore, with people pretending they weren't staring at her. She was used to it. 6 years running one of the most recognizable luxury hotel brands in the country, and she still walked into rooms the same way she always had: shoulders back, chin level, eyes forward. Not because she was performing confidence, because she genuinely did not have time for anything less. Miss Whitmore. A young woman in a headset appeared at her elbow. The moment Sophia stepped through the grand entrance of the Meridian Club in downtown Chicago. Your table is reserved East Wing, near the stage. Is the East Wing quieter than last year? Yes, ma'am. We moved the live orchestra to good. Sophia handed the woman her wrap without breaking stride. And I'll need sparkling water. No ice, within the next 4 minutes, or I'll be leaving before the appetizers. The young woman blinked. Of course, Sophia didn't wait for a response. She moved through the crowd the way a ship moves through harbor water deliberately, with a kind and space without asking for it. People stepped aside. Some nodded. Some smiled the way people smile when they're nervous and don't know what else to do with their face. She had built Whitmore luxury hotels from a single leased property in downtown Milwaukee, a rundown boutique that everyone in the industry told her was a money pit. That was 15 years ago. Tonight, Whitmore Hotels operated 47 locations across 12 states, employed over 9,000 people, and had just completed a preliminary deal that would take the brand international for the first time. She was 44 years old. She had not taken a vacation in 3 years. She had not been on a date in 2. She was, by every measurable standard, one of the most successful self-made women in American hospitality. She was also, by her own quiet mission, the kind she only made to herself at 2 in the morning, when the office was dark and the building was still almost completely alone. But that was not something she advertised. Sophia, a voice cut through the noise. Loud, familiar, already slightly too cheerful. She turned. Diana Caldwell was moving toward her through the crowd, with a glass of champagne in each hand and a smile that Sophia had learned over 17 years of friendship almost always preceded something she was going to regret. Diana was the head of Caldwell Financial, a boutique investment firm her family had owned for 3 generations. And she had been Sophia's closest friend since they were both young women scrapping for recognition in a world that didn't take either of them particularly seriously. Diana was warm where Sophia was cool, spontaneous where Sophia was structured, and she had a very particular sense of humor that, on its best days, was genuinely funny. On its worst days, it caused international incidents. "You look incredible," Diana said, handing Sophia one of the champagne glasses. "I didn't ask for champagne." "No, but I brought it anyway. That's what friendship is." Diana looped her arm through Sophia's and steered her toward the East Wing. "How was the flight from Denver?" "Fine. How is the event looking?" "Wonderful. Raised almost $2 million in the pre-reception alone. Gerald Hurst donated his vacation house in the Hamptons for the silent auction." Diana paused. Nobody bid on it, which is either a statement about Gerald's taste or the state of the economy. Possibly both. Sophia almost smiled. "What do you need from me tonight?" "Just your presence. Your foundation is being highlighted in the evening program, the Scholarship Fund, the Hospitality Training Initiative. People will want to say hello. They can say hello in under 2 minutes, and then let me eat in peace. You are a deeply warm human being, Sophia. I built a warm company. That's sufficient." Diana laughed, and then, just slightly too quickly, changed the subject. "Oh, there's something I should mention. We did something a little different with seating this year." Sophia's eyes narrowed. She knew that tone, Diana. "It's a new concept. One of the event planners suggested it: paired seating. Instead of sitting with your usual table, Each guest is matched with someone outside their industry. The idea is to encourage cross-sector conversation, build new relationships, that kind of thing. I'm not interested in being someone's networking experiment. It's for charity. Everything at these events is for charity. That doesn't make it less irritating. Diana's smile stretched in a way that had nothing to do with amusement. You'll be fine. Your partner for the evening is already at the table. Just go say hello, be a person, I am a person. Be a warmer one, for 2 hours. That's all I'm asking. Sophia studied her friend's face for a long moment. Something was off. Diana was holding her expression just a little too carefully, the way people do when they're trying not to give something away. Who is it? Sophia asked. Someone interesting. That's not an answer. Someone you wouldn't normally meet. Diana. Just go say hello. Diana gave her a small, firm push toward the east wing and immediately turned to greet someone else, which was a coward's exit, and they both knew it. Sophia set her champagne glass down on a passing server's tray. She hadn't wanted it anyway, and walked toward her table. She heard it before she saw it. A low rumble of laughter from the cluster of people near the east entrance. Familiar voices: Marcus Webb, who ran Webb Capital. Gillian Cross, whose tech company had gone public 2 years ago at a valuation that made headlines. Richard Cho, who managed more private equity than Sophia cared to calculate. They were standing in a loose semicircle, champagne glasses raised, looking at something with a particular kind of amused attention that Sophia associated with watching someone embarrass themselves. She slowed. At the center of their attention stood a man. He was tall, probably 6 feet, maybe just under. Dark hair that was getting to the point where it needed a trim but hadn't gotten there yet. He was wearing a blazer that was slightly too formal for someone who clearly didn't wear blazers. Often the kind of jacket that comes off a rack when you're trying to clean up for something important and you don't quite know the rules. His shoes were dress shoes, polished, but the polish was the kind you put on yourself the morning of the event, rather than the kind that comes from a professional. He was holding a cocktail napkin and a small name card, and he was reading the name card the way people read things. They're not entirely sure they're reading correctly. Sophia looked at the name card from across the room. It had her name on it. Sophia Whitmore, table 7. The card was supposed to go to her, so she could find her partner for the evening, which meant she looked at the man again. Marcus Webb caught her eye over the stranger's shoulder and grinned. Not the warm, collegial grin of a peer. The tight, delighted grin of someone wanting something unfold that they arranged. The understanding landed in Sophia's chest like a stone dropped into still water. This was the joke. This man, whoever he was, whatever world he came from, was the joke. And she was supposed to be the punchline. She watched Marcus lean in and say something quietly to Gillian Cross, who pressed her lips together to contain a smile. She watched Richard Cho glance between the man with the name card and the direction Sophia was standing, already anticipating the moment she arrived and saw what they'd done. They thought this was funny. They thought she would react. Sophia Whitmore took one slow breath, and then she walked directly toward the table. She heard the energy shift around her as she approached, the subtle recalibration of people who were watching, and suddenly realized they'd been caught watching. Marcus straightened. Gillian looked away. Richard found something fascinating in his champagne glass. The man with the name card didn't do any of those things. He looked up. He looked directly at her. No performance of surprise. No quick assessment of who she was and what that meant. Just a straightforward, even glance. Like someone who had been taught that looking away from people was rude. "You must be Sophia Whitmore," he said. His voice was even. Midwest. The kind of voice that didn't put on anything extra. "I am." She held out her hand. He shook it. Firm. Not crushing, the kind of handshake that meant he'd done physical work long enough that he'd learned to be careful about his own strength. "Nathan Carter, Mr. Carter. Nathan is fine." He held out the name card. "Someone gave me this about 20 minutes ago and pointed me toward this part of the room. I've been standing here, trying to figure out if I was at the right event." "You're at the right event." "Okay." He nodded once, seemed to make a private decision, and gestured toward the table. "Should we sit down? I've been on my feet since 4 this morning, and I'd rather not stand for the next 2 hours if I don't have to." Behind Sophia, she heard someone, Marcus, She was almost certain make a sound that was rapidly converted into a cough. She pulled out her own chair and sat down. Nathan sat across from her, set the name card aside, and looked around at the table setting, with the candid expression of a man who had absolutely never been to an event like this in his life, and was not pretending otherwise. "There are 4 forks," he said. "There are. I know what 3 of them are for." He glanced up at her. "I'm going to watch you for the 4th one." Sophia looked at him for a long moment. "Fair enough," she said. They ate the first course in a silence that was, oddly, not uncomfortable. Sophia was accustomed to silence at these events, the manufactured kind, where everyone was quiet, but still performing, still angling, still constructing the next thing they would say for maximum effect. This was different. Nathan Carter ate his appetizer like a man who was hungry and not embarrassed about it. Looked around the ballroom with genuine curiosity rather than social calculation, and didn't say anything until he had something to say. It was, she realized, the most relaxing first course she'd experienced in about 6 years. From across the room she could feel the table where Marcus and Jillian and Richard were sitting. She could feel them watching, waiting for the scene, waiting for her to turn cold, or him to say something clumsy, or for the whole thing to collapse into exactly the kind of cringe-worthy spectacle they'd set up. She didn't give them the satisfaction. "What do you do, Nathan?" she asked. "I run an auto repair shop," he said. "Carter Auto and Service, about 40 miles outside the city. Been at it for 11 years. Do you enjoy it?" He considered the question like it deserved actual consideration. "Yeah, I do. There's something satisfying about a problem that has a real answer. Something's broken, you figure out why, you fix it. The car either runs or it doesn't. No ambiguity. There's ambiguity in the business side. Always. But the work itself, no, the work is honest." Sophia watched him. "How many employees?" 4 full-time, 2 part-time on weekends." He cut his food neatly. "Small operation. We're not growing the way I'd like, but we're surviving, which counts for something these days. What's limiting the growth?" He looked up at her, a quick, slightly surprised look, like he hadn't expected the question to go that direction. "Capital, mostly. Upgraded the equipment 2 years ago, which was necessary but expensive. Still paying down the line of credit. Hard to invest in marketing when the margin's thin. Have you considered a business loan separate from the equipment financing? SBA has programs specifically designed for." "I know what the SBA has," he said. "Not defensive. Just clear. I've done the research. The issue isn't information, it's timing. I've got my daughter's school costs next year, and I'm not comfortable extending more debt until I know those numbers are covered." Sophia paused. "Your daughter, Emma, she's 9. Something shifted in his expression, slight but visible. The kind of shift that happens when someone mentions a person who matters to them more than anything else in the world. "She's the reason I ended up here tonight, actually. Friend of mine won a charity table and couldn't use all the seats. Emma told me I needed to get out more." He almost smiled. "She's 9 years old, and she's already managing my social schedule." Despite herself, Sophia felt the corner of her mouth move. "How long have you been raising her alone?" The shift in his expression deepened, more careful now. 5 years. Her mom passed when Emma was 4. A beat. It was sudden heart thing. Nobody saw it coming. Sophia held his gaze. She didn't say "I'm sorry" the reflexive way people said it when they didn't know what else to offer. She let the weight of what he'd said exist, without rushing to cover it. He seemed to notice. "You don't have kids," he said. It wasn't a question. No family? My parents passed. I have a brother in Phoenix. We talk at Christmas, and occasionally in between." She considered how that sounded. "We're not estranged, we're just busy." "Busy is a choice," he said. Sophia looked at him. "That's a blunt thing to say to someone you've known for 20 minutes. Is it wrong?" She didn't answer. He didn't press. The second course arrived, and with it came the ambient noise of 400 people eating, and the orchestra that had been moved from the East Wing to somewhere further away where it provided atmosphere without demanding attention. Sophia became aware slowly, then all at once, that she was talking to Nathan Carter the way she talked to almost nobody. Not performing, not managing, not calculating the downstream effects of every sentence. Just talking. She wasn't sure when it had started. "Tell me about the hotel you built first," he said. "Not the company, the first one. The actual building." Something in his tone specific, Curious, not impressed made her want to answer honestly, rather than rehearsedly. It was a boutique property on the east side of Milwaukee. 12 rooms. Previous owner had let it deteriorate, water damage on the upper floors, dated fixtures, a kitchen that had failed its last 2 health inspections. Everyone I spoke to told me to walk away. But you didn't. I had very little money and a very clear vision, which is a dangerous combination. She set down her fork. I could see what the place could be. The bones were good. The location was good. The problem was cosmetic, expensive cosmetic, but cosmetic. So I bought it, moved into one of the upper rooms while the renovations happened around me, and worked double shifts at a restaurant 3 blocks away to cover the labor costs. Nathan was watching her with his full attention. Not the polished, practiced attention of someone networking. Just listening. How long did the renovation take? 7 months. I was 28 years old, and I ate a lot of peanut butter, and lost about 18 pounds and discovered that I actually had very good instincts about interior design, which was not information I'd previously had access to. She stopped. I don't normally tell that story. Why not? Because people in my world expect a different version. Smother, less peanut butter. Nathan's mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close. The peanut butter part is the best part. That's what I've always thought. From across the room, she heard a burst of laughter from the table where Marcus and his group were sitting. She glanced over. They had stopped watching her. And Nathan, which meant either they'd grown bored or they'd decided the scene they'd arranged, wasn't playing the way they'd planned. Good. Can I ask you something? Nathan said. You can ask. The people at that table over there. He didn't turn to look. He didn't need to. She realized he'd clocked them the moment he sat down. They set this up, didn't they? The pairing. Sophia paused. What makes you think that? Because when you walked toward the table, 2 of them stopped mid-law, and one of them suddenly needed to look at his phone. He met her eyes. And because when you sat down, you made a specific choice not to look in their direction, which means you were thinking about them. He paused. People who've been set up do that. They decide whether to let the joke run or shut it down. You decided to let it run. Sophia studied him. You're more observant than people give you credit for, she said. I fix cars for a living. You have to read a machine by what it's doing, not by what it should be doing. Same principle applies to people. He looked at her steadily. So it was a joke, apparently, because I don't belong here. Because they thought the contrast was funny. You and I, different worlds. Nathan picked up his water glass and turned it once in his hands. And what do you think? Sophia looked at him. At the slightly too formal blazer, at the steady, unimpressed eyes, at the man who had noticed within 20 minutes of sitting down exactly what had been done and why, and had said nothing until he chose to. I think, she said, that you're the most honest person in this room. Nathan looked at her for a moment. That's a low bar, he said. This is a room full of people who charge admission for things nobody needs. Sophia Whitmore laughed. An actual laugh, not the polished, controlled exhalation she deployed at events when something was mildly amusing. A real laugh. The kind that came from somewhere she hadn't opened in a while. From across the room she was aware dimly of Marcus Webb looking up from his table. She didn't look back. By the time the main course arrived, Sophia had learned the following things about Nathan Carter. He woke up every morning at 5:15 because Emma had gone through a phase at age 6 of waking up early and demanding pancakes, and even though she'd outgrown the phase, his body hadn't caught up yet. He'd read more books in the last 5 years than in the previous 20, mostly because evenings with a sleeping child and no one to talk to either drove you to the television or drove you to the bookshelf, and he'd made a choice. He had strong opinions about which chain restaurants were worth stopping at during road trips and which were not. He had not been on a date since his wife died, not for lack of opportunity, he clarified carefully, but because the few times he'd tried, he'd spent the entire evening thinking about how strange it was to be sitting across from a person who didn't know any of the important things about him, and it had made the whole exercise feel lonelier than just staying home. That Sophia paused. That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me at one of these events in about a decade. I don't have the energy for anything else, Nathan said. I was up at 5:15, you mentioned. I'm going to mention it a few more times. It's load-bearing information. She almost smiled again. How did you end up at a charity gala for executives? My friend Paulie Reeves, he does HVAC. Got a contract with a tech company last year. They gave him a table at this thing as a thank you. He couldn't fill all the seats. Nathan shrugged. Emma said go. So I went. You do what Emma says. Emma is the wisest person I know. She's also 9, which means she still thinks bedtime is negotiable, so there are limits. He looked at the dessert menu that had appeared beside his plate. She would like this menu, though. She has opinions about chocolate. Serious opinions? Life or death opinions. The kind that require a full presentation and occasionally a tie-breaking vote. Sophia set her elbow on the table, something she never did at these events, and rested her chin in her hand. Tell me about her. He did. For 20 minutes, Nathan Carter talked about his daughter in the way that people talk about the thing they love most in the world when someone actually gives them permission to.
Emma had recently developed an obsession with astronomy
And had a star chart taped to her bedroom ceiling. She was learning to play piano and hated practice but loved performing, which he said was a personality trait she absolutely did not get from him. She had strong feelings about the correct way to arrange a bookshelf by color, not by author, a position she defended with the passion of a litigator. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's stubbornness, and, lately, a few of her mother's expressions, which sometimes stopped Nathan mid-conversation when they surfaced unexpectedly. That must be hard, Sophia said quietly, seeing her. It's the best thing in the world, he said. And the hardest thing in the world. At the same time, he looked at his hands for a moment. I don't think those two things cancel each other out. I think they just coexist. Sophia was quiet. You said you lost your parents, Nathan said. My mother when I was 31. My father 2 years later. She kept her voice even. Both of them before Whitmore Hotels became what it is now. They knew I was building something. They didn't get to see it finished. I'm sorry. She looked at him. He wasn't saying it reflexively. He meant it. The company was named for them, she said. Whitmore was my mother's maiden name. She went back to it after my parents divorced. She was very proud of it. Sophia paused. When I put it on the first hotel, I wanted her name to be on something she could be proud of. Even after she was gone. The table was quiet for a moment. Nathan picked up his water glass. He raised it slightly, a small private toast. To the people who don't get to see the finish line, he said. Sophia picked up her own glass and touched it to his. The gala moved into its evening program speeches. The auction, the moment where various important things into a microphone, while the rest of the room pretended to listen. Sophia and Nathan sat beside each other through all of it, occasionally exchanging the kind of quiet sideways observations that people make when they're watching the same thing together and have already established a private frequency. At one point, during a particularly long and self-congratulatory speech by the gala's lead sponsor, Nathan leaned slightly toward her and said, in a voice just low enough not to carry, he's used the word synergy 4 times. I know, Sophia murmured. I've been counting. Is there a threshold at which it becomes a medical condition? I'll consult my team. And then, because she genuinely could not help it, she laughed again. Brief, quiet, but real. She felt it differently this time. Not just the laugh itself, but the fact of it, the ease of it. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed at something at one of these events, because something was actually genuinely funny to her, rather than because laughter was a social tool to be deployed strategically. She couldn't remember the last time she'd sat beside someone and felt, just slightly, just at the edges, like she could put something down. It was an unfamiliar sensation. She wasn't sure she trusted it. After the program, as the event wound toward its close, and people began the slow migration toward exits and whatever came next, Diana appeared at Sophia's shoulder with the careful, tentative energy of someone expecting consequences. So Diana said, "How was set that up?" Sophia said. Diana pressed her lips together. I may have had a small hand in the pairing selection. It was a joke. Diana paused. Marcus suggested it. He thought it would be funny. I thought maybe it would be good for you to talk to someone who she stopped. I'm sorry, Sophia. That was not kind of me. Sophia looked at her. He's a good man, Diana. Diana blinked. I know. That's why she stopped again. You're not angry. I didn't say that. Sophia glanced toward the east wing, where Nathan had stepped away briefly to take a call from the babysitter checking on Emma. I said he's a good man. Diana watched her friend's face with an expression that was new, surprised, maybe careful. Something that looked after a moment like relief. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. Sophia was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet, she said. Honestly. And then, because honesty was apparently contagious, tonight, but I'm not walking away from this conversation the way I've walked away from every other conversation I've had in the last 10 years. Diana said nothing. Sophia turned back toward the room. Nathan was making his way back from the far end of the ballroom, phone tucked away, jacket slightly crooked from where he'd reached for his pocket, completely unaware of, or completely unbothered by the fact that he was the only man in the room whose suit hadn't been custom-made. He caught her eye across the distance and walked toward her with the same unhurried, uncomplicated directness he'd had when he'd first looked up at her. No performance, no calculation, just a man walking back to finish a conversation. Sophia Whitmore, who had built a billion-dollar empire on the conviction that she needed no one and nothing she couldn't build herself, felt something shift in the architecture of that belief. Small, quiet, but real. Babysitter okay? She asked when he reached her. Emma talked her into letting her stay up. For one more chapter, he said. She does this every time. The sitter never sees it coming. He paused. I should probably head out soon. Yes. He looked at her. Yes, good unexpected. Sophia held his gaze. Yes. Nathan reached into the inside pocket of his slightly too formal blazer and produced a business card. Honest card, the kind printed in bulk from an office supply store, with the shop name and phone number, and a small logo that had probably been designed by someone local. He held it out to her. If you're ever 40 miles outside of Chicago and your car makes a sound it shouldn't, he said, you know where to find me. Sophia took the card. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked up at him. I drive a 2024 Range Rover, she said. It doesn't make sounds. Everything makes sounds eventually, Nathan said. That's what I've learned. He nodded, once that same simple final nod, and walked toward the exit. Sophia watched him go. Behind her, she could feel Diana watching her. She could feel, further across the room, Marcus and his table, wrapping up their evening, probably already composing the story they'd tell about the CEO and the mechanic, about the joke that had played itself out exactly as expected. She didn't turn around. She looked down at the business card in her hand. Carter Auto and Service. Nathan Carter, owner. Then she looked up at the space where he'd been. The joke, she thought, was not what any of them believed it was. Not tonight, not yet, but something had started. And Sophia Whitmore, who had spent 15 years being very, very good at knowing when something was about to change everything, felt it, in her chest, like the first note of a song she didn't know she'd been waiting to hear. End of Part 1. Part 2. Louis. Viet du 5000. 500 Thu Liên Kate Liên Mike. Bởi các phần trước trong câu chuyện, hối thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện Liên Mike khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần Liên Mike với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách Liên Mike. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, try ngặt quang đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ. Phong cách kể chuyện mi hoa kỳ giọng văn dô cảm xúc. Chân thực và gần gũi. Không mô tả kind, tập trung vào hành động cảm xúc và tâm lý nhân vật. Viết phần tiếp đạt điểm tin và bổ sung tiếp đồ câu chuyện 9. Sur lối AI, kế theo nói thứ ba. Tung đô kích tình công Việt Lan man. Kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau. Louis trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang mục document. Mỗi 2-3 phút cần có mini climax và đạt 10-15 mini climax mỗi phần. Ku 10-12 phút có one twist learn sâu sắc. Dan Zen mini cliffhanger Mike hơn. Tung ting tự nhiên cho phản ứng của các nhân vật. Thêm nhịp điệu kịch ting, thực tế và gần gũi. Mỗi 8-10 phút cần có mock zu chân khán giả. Thêm đánh dấu thời gian. Louis không mô tả cảnh, không có phần gạch trong bài viết. Viết văn bản phù hợp với TTS. Và chỉ cần viết nội dung và viết đúng lệnh nhé. Message collapsed. The card sat on Sophia's kitchen counter for 9 days. She didn't throw it away. She didn't move it. She didn't enter the number into her phone or pass it to her assistant or do any of the logical, organizational things she did with every other piece of paper that landed in her life. She just let it sit there, beside the espresso machine, slightly crooked against the backsplash tile, like something she hadn't decided what to do with yet. Which, if she was being honest with herself, a habit she was out of practice with, was exactly what it was. On the 10th morning, her assistant Priya walked into the office at 7:45, with a tablet and a look on her face that Sophia had learned to read as bad news in business casual. Priya was 29, efficient to the point of being nearly robotic about it, and had worked for Sophia long enough that she no longer cushioned things she was about to say. The Harmon Group reached out late last night, Priya said, setting the tablet on the desk. They've formally requested a pause on the international expansion discussions. Marcus Webb's office sent a follow-up this morning, confirming that Webb Capital is reconsidering its position in the deal. Sophia looked at the numbers on the tablet. She kept her face neutral. Define reconsidering. They used the word exposure, as in, they're concerned about their exposure if the deal doesn't perform as projected. The projections were conservative. I wrote them myself. I know. They're aware. Priya paused. There was also a piece in a financial trade publication this morning. Small item buried in the industry section, but it suggests that Whitmore hotels may be overextended ahead of the international push. No named sources. Sophia looked up. How buried? Third item in the hospitality section. But someone sent it to 3 members of your board before 7A. The room was very quiet for a moment. Sophia picked up the tablet and read the piece herself. It was 4 paragraphs. It was precisely vague enough to be undeniable, and precisely pointed, damning enough, the kind of thing that could only have been written by someone with internal knowledge shaped and shaded, just enough to create maximum doubt without crossing into accusation. No facts that could be checked. No sources that could be confronted. Just a carefully placed cloud of uncertainty over a deal that required confidence to close. Who else has seen this? She asked. Your CFFO, 2 board members, and the lead contact at the Harmon Group I confirmed. They received it when I called to follow up this morning. Sophia set the tablet down. She knew what this was. She had been in business long enough to recognize the shape of it, not a crisis that had arrived, but a crisis that had been built, deliberately, with planning and timing and access to the kind of information that didn't exist outside of her own inner circle. Clear my morning, she said. All of it. Priya nodded and was already halfway to the door. There's one more thing. Sophia waited. Richard Cho's office called, requesting a board call for this Friday. Said it was about strategic reassessment. Did he use those exact words? That was the exact phrase. Sophia was quiet for 3 seconds. In 15 years of building Whitmore hotels, she had never once had a board member call for a strategic reassessment without warning her first. It was a breach of professional protocol so obvious that doing it accidentally was essentially impossible, which meant it wasn't accidental. Book me a car, she said, and get me a full financial audit request to every department head by noon. Full documentation, nothing summarized. Yes, and Priya, this doesn't leave the office. Priya looked at her steadily. It never does. She left. Sophia sat alone in the silence of her corner office on the 23rd floor, with the city spread out below her and the quiet, cold understanding settling in her stomach. That someone inside her company, someone come close enough to know the right words to say, and the right people to say them to, was trying to take everything she had built. She sat with that understanding for exactly 60 seconds. Then she picked up her phone. She did not call her lawyer. She did not call her CFO. She did not call Diana, who would have been her first call in almost any other situation. She called the number on the business card. It rang twice. Carter Auto. His voice was level and slightly muffled, like he'd answered with a hand that wasn't entirely clean. Hold on a second. A pause. The sound of something being set down. Sorry, go ahead. This is Sophia Whitmore, she said. A beat. I remember, he said. It's been what, a week and a half? 9 days. 9 days. Another pause, not uncomfortable. How's the Range Rover? Despite everything, she almost smiled. Functioning. Good. That's what we like to hear. His voice settled. Quieter now. What's going on? And Sophia. who had not asked anyone for help in so long that the act of reaching for the phone had felt almost physically strange, said Beklop, "I don't know exactly. Something's wrong, and I can't see the whole shape of it yet." Nathan was quiet for a moment. She could hear, in the background, the ambient noise of a working garage, something mechanical distant, the sound of a place where problems had real answers. "Are you in danger?" he asked. "Not like that. Business." "Okay." A pause. "Do you want to talk it through?" She hesitated. "Then I don't know why I called you." "That's all right," he said. I answered. She didn't tell him everything. Not then. But she told him enough: the article, the board call, the pullback from Web Capital. And he listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, before he had the information, without any of the reflexive confidence that her executives deployed to make themselves feel useful before they actually understood the problem. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "The article," he said. "Who would have known the specific numbers it mentioned?" Sophia felt something sharpen in her focus. "What do you mean?" "You said it referenced projected revenue from the international deal. Did those projections exist in a public filing?" "No. They were internal documents. So whoever wrote it, or fed it to whoever wrote it, had access to your internal documents." "Yes. And the board call. The person who called it Cho, he's someone who was at the charity event." Sophia paused. "Yes. And the Web Capital pullback. Webb was also there." She sat very still. "Nathan, I'm not saying it's them," he said carefully. "I'm saying the timing is interesting. The event was 9 days ago. The article dropped 10 days after. The board call came the same morning as the article." Another pause. "In my line of work, when 3 things go wrong at the same time, it's almost never 3 separate problems." Sophia looked out the window at the city below. "It's one problem," she said. "With 3 symptoms," he said. "Yeah." She was quiet for a moment. "You figured that out in 3 minutes." "I wasn't figuring anything out. I was just listening." A pause. "What does your gut say?" "My gut says someone inside my company gave information to someone outside it, and that person used it to create the appearance of instability right before a critical deal." "Then trust your gut," he said it simply, not as reassurance, as fact. "You built something that works. You know what it's supposed to feel like when it's running right." "This doesn't feel right." "No," she said, "it doesn't." "Then start with what you know, not what you suspect what you know. Build from there." Sophia closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her mind was already moving, already sorting and sequencing, and identifying the first true thing she could stand on. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't do anything. You listened." He was quiet for a second. "That one's free," he said. "Call if you need the second one." She hung up the phone, and then she went to work. 3 days later, Sophia knew 2 things she hadn't known before. The first, the financial data cited in the trade article matched precisely with a report generated by her internal analytics team 6 weeks prior. The distribution list for that report had 11 names on it. Of those 11, she had personally trusted every single one. The second, Richard Cho had met privately with a competitor, a large European hospitality conglomerate, that had made several quiet offers to acquire Whitmore hotels over the previous 2 years, all of which Sophia had declined exactly 12 days before the charity gala. She sat across from her CFO, Daniel Park, in a conference room with the door closed and the blinds angled so that anyone walking past could not see the documents on the table. "The meeting with the European group," she said. "Did Cho report it to you?" Daniel was 53, careful, and had been with the company for 8 years. He had the face of a man who was doing rapid internal calculations about what answer was safe to give. "No," he said finally. "He did not." "Did he have an obligation to?" "Under the board's disclosure policy, yes. Any contact with an acquiring party requires disclosure within 48 hours. Sophia looked at the document in front of her. The meeting was 12 days ago. He's 16 days past disclosure. Daniel said nothing. "I need everything," she said. "Every communication, internal and external, from Cho's account over the last 60 days. Financial access logs, document downloads, external emails. Everything, Sophia." Daniel's voice was careful. "If we're wrong about this." "We're not wrong." She looked at him. "I need to know if you're with me on this, Daniel. Not as my CFO. As someone who has been in this company long enough to know what it's worth." He held her gaze for a long moment. "I'll have the audit pulled by morning," he said. She called Nathan that evening from her apartment. It was after 9. She was eating takeout from a Thai place, 2 blocks away, and reading through financial logs on her laptop, and she called him because she told herself she needed to talk through what she'd found with someone who didn't have a stake in the outcome. She told herself that. He answered on the second ring, same as before. You eat yet? Instead of hello, I'm eating now. Good. Emma tried to convince me that pizza counts as breakfast if you eat it before noon. We had a full debate about it. She made some valid points. Sophia felt herself exhale. Who won? She did, technically. The precedent is troubling. A pause. How's the situation? She told him what she'd found. The report, the distribution list, the meeting with the European group. He listened without interrupting, and she could hear faintly the sound of dishes being washed in the background, the ordinary soundtrack of a person's evening. And something about that sound made the conversation feel less like a strategy session, and more like just 2 people talking. This Cho, Nathan said. He was there that night. At the gala. Yes, he was at the table that was watching us. Sophia paused. How did you know that? Because I watched that table back, he said. When you walked toward me, I wanted to understand what I'd walked into. He was the one who looked the most interested in your reaction. Not like someone who'd set up a joke. Like someone watching to see what you'd do under pressure. Sophia set down her fork. You said that to me at the gala, she said slowly. You said you were watching them watch us. Yeah. You thought it was odd. I thought he was looking at you the way someone looks at a problem they're trying to solve, Nathan said. Not the way someone looks at a friend. Sophia sat back in her chair. The apartment was quiet around her, the particular quiet of a large space with only one person in it. The joke, she said, the pairing. You think it was related. I think someone wanted to see how you'd react when you were off balance. A pause. Whether you'd make a mistake. Whether the situation would embarrass you publicly enough to create distance between you and the board. They wanted to destabilize me. They wanted to see if you could be destabilized. His voice was even. And you weren't. So they moved to the next play. Sophia stared at the financial logs on her screen. The article, the board call, the web capital, pullback. 3 symptoms of one problem. And the problem had a name. Nathan, she said. Yeah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. That's the only way I know how. She paused. The night at the gala, when you sat across from me, what did you actually see? He was quiet for a moment. Not dodging, thinking. A woman, he said, who was very good at being in control, and was surprised that it wasn't working the way it usually did. Because of you. Because of the situation. I just happened to be in it. A pause. And maybe because I wasn't looking at you the way everyone else in that room was. How were they looking at me? Like you were a position, he said. Like you were something to calculate. I wasn't calculating anything. I just saw a person having a weird night. Sophia was quiet for a long time. That is, she said finally, simultaneously, the most ordinary and the most extraordinary thing anyone has said to me in years. Sophia. His voice was quiet. You need to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a hard day. You don't know what tomorrow looks like. No, but I know you've been running on whatever you ate at 9 p. And however much you slept last night. And if this is as serious as it sounds, you're going to need to be sharper than everyone in the room. She looked at the time. It was 10:47. How does a mechanic from outside Chicago know that? She said. Because I spent 3 years raising a newborn on no sleep and learned very quickly that tired people make bad decisions, and good decisions made tired feel worse the next morning. A pause. Go to sleep, Sophia. She closed the laptop. Good night, Nathan, she said. Good night. She sat in the quiet of her apartment for a moment after the call ended. She thought about the card on her kitchen counter. She thought about the way he'd watched her from across the table, at the gala, not calculating, not performing, just seeing. She thought about how long it had been since someone had told her to go to sleep and meant it as something other than an exit from a conversation. Then she went to sleep. The board call on Friday was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. By 9 in the morning, Sophia had already done 4 things. She had sent a legal hold notification to her IT department, freezing all document deletion across the company's servers for the previous 90 days. She had retained outside counsel, not her usual corporate firm, but a litigation team with experience in executive misconduct cases. She had spoken privately with 3 board members she trusted, women she'd known for years, who had voted to approve her international strategy and had no known relationship with Cho or the European acquiring group. And she had placed a call to the Harmon Group's lead contact directly, bypassing the formal channels, and spoken to him for 40 minutes about what she believed was happening and what she intended to do about it. He had listened. At the end of the call, he had said, "Send me the documentation as it becomes available." He had not said he was withdrawing. That was enough. At 1:55, Sophia walked into the boardroom. She wore a dark jacket she'd owned for 6 years because she knew it fit her precisely, and she didn't want to spend any part of this afternoon thinking about anything except the task in front of her. She set a single manila folder on the table, in front of her chair, and did not open it. Richard Cho arrived at 1:58 with Marcus Webb beside him. Sophia had not known Marcus would be attending. He was not a board member. His presence in the boardroom without invitation was technically a violation of the company's governance policies. She noted it. She said nothing. She let them arrange themselves. Let them begin. Cho opened with the word concerned, which she had expected. He moved through the trade article, the projected revenue questions, the strategic uncertainty around the international deal. His voice was measured and professional, and every word had been prepared in advance. He was good at this. She could see why he'd gotten where he was. When he finished, he looked at her. "Sophia," he said, and his use of her first name in this context was a small, deliberate thing, a performance of intimacy, designed to soften what he was doing. "We think it would be in the company's best interest to pause the international expansion." Take a breath. "Who is we?" she asked. "The board." "The board hasn't voted," she said. "The board hasn't discussed this formally. We is not the board. So I'll ask again, who is we?" Cho glanced at Marcus, a quick, reflexive glance. The kind that happens when you check in with a partner. Sophia saw it. Every board member in the room saw it. She opened the manila folder. 12 days before this meeting, she said, "You met privately with representatives of Kronfeld Hospitality Group, the European firm that has made 3 acquisition offers for Whitmore hotels over the past 4 years, all of which the board declined." She placed the document on the table. "You did not disclose this meeting within the 48-hour window required by our governance policy. In fact, you have not disclosed it at all. I discovered it independently." The room was very still. Cho's expression did not move, but his jaw tightened, just slightly. "The trade article, published 10 days ago," Sophia continued, "referenced internal financial projections that exist only in a report distributed to 11 people, all of whom are in this company's leadership structure. The article was sent to 3 board members before 7 a.m. on the morning Richard called for this meeting." She looked around the room. "The timing is not a coincidence. The information is not public. And the goal," she looked directly at Cho, "is not a strategic reassessment. The goal is to manufacture enough uncertainty around this deal that the board removes me as CEO. And the acquisition by Kronfeld Hospitality becomes the path of least resistance." The silence in the room was the kind that had weight. One of the board members, Patricia Anand, who had been on the board since year 2, said quietly, "Richard, is this true?" Cho said nothing for 3 seconds. In 3 seconds, a great deal can happen in a room. "The meeting with Kronfeld was exploratory," he said finally. "An informal conversation. About acquiring this company," Sophia said. "About options while serving on this board." "Sophia." "That," she said, and her voice was absolutely level, absolutely controlled, "is a breach of fiduciary duty. It is also, depending on how the information in that article was obtained and transferred, potentially a great deal more than that." She looked at Marcus Webb. "And I would be very interested to understand what role Webb Capital has played in the last 3 weeks, given that your firm's pullback was timed to the hour with the article's publication." Marcus's expression went flat. "I think," Patricia Anand said, in the quiet voice of someone who has made a decision, "that we need to suspend this meeting and refer this matter to legal counsel." "Agreed," said 2 other board members simultaneously. Cho looked around the room, and for the first time since Sophia had known him, since the nights at charity galas and the quarterly dinners and the board retreats, where he'd always been so carefully, perfectly positioned. He looked like a man who had miscalculated. "This isn't over," he said. Sophia looked at him. "No," she said. "It's not. But the part where you thought you were in control of it, that part is." She called Nathan from the parking garage at 3:45. Her hands were completely steady. She was aware of that the steadiness in the way you become aware of things that have required effort after the effort is complete. He answered on the first ring this time. "Tell me," he said. She told him. All of it. Cho's face when she laid the documents on the table. Patricia Anand's quiet voice making the decision that mattered. The way Mark's web had gone flat and silent and retreated into a kind of controlled nothing that told her everything she needed to know about how involved he was. Nathan was quiet for a moment. "You did it alone?" he said. "I had lawyers. I had board allies. She stopped. "I had the shape of it. From the conversation you and I had 3 days ago. The 3 symptoms, 1 problem. That was you," he said. "I just asked the question. Sometimes the question is the thing." She leaned against the wall of the parking garage. She was tired in a way that went down to the bone, not the panicked tired of the last week, but the clean exhaustion that follows something finished. "Emma, okay?" The pause before he answered was just long enough to tell her he noticed the question that she'd asked it. "She's good. She's at school. She's got a book report due Monday, and she's very angry about it." "What's the book?" "Charlotte's Web." She said it made her cry, and she doesn't forgive E. "Be white for that." Sophia laughed. Clean, full, the kind that had been compressed somewhere inside her all week. "She sounds remarkable," Sophia said. "She is." A pause. "Sophia, yes, you fought for what you built." His voice was quiet and direct and without decoration. "That matters, not just to the company. To..." She didn't answer right away. "I know," she said finally. "I'm starting to remember why I built it." The parking garage was empty around her, and the city noise from outside was muffled and far away, and Nathan Carter was 40 miles out of the city, probably standing in his shop with grease on his hands, and a daughter with opinions about E. B. White waiting for him at the end of the day, and Sophia Whitmore, who had spent 15 years deciding that alone was efficient, and alone was strong, and alone was the only thing she could truly count on, was suddenly, quietly, and for the first time, in longer than she could accurately measure, not entirely sure she agreed. "I should let you go," she said. "Okay," a pause. "Get some dinner. Real dinner. You're very bossy for a mechanic, and you're very bad at taking care of yourself for a CEO." Another pause, brief, warm. "Good night, Sophia." "Good night, Nathan." She hung up. She stood in the parking garage for another moment. Then she went and got real dinner, because some advice she was learning was worth taking. And some people, the ones who saw you clearly, without calculating what you were worth to them, were worth listening to, even when you couldn't entirely explain why. Especially then. 3 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, Sophia drove herself to Carter Auto and Service for the first time. She didn't tell Priya. She didn't tell Diana. She put the address from the business card into her phone, got in the Range Rover that never made sounds, and drove 40 miles out of the city on a Tuesday morning when her calendar said she had a working lunch with her marketing team that she had quietly rescheduled. She told herself it was practical. The company's legal process was still grinding forward. Cho had retained his own counsel. Marcus Webb had gone very quiet in a way that suggested his own lawyers had told him to, and the board had formally suspended both men, pending the outcome of the investigation. The Harmon Group deal was back on the table, cautiously, with new documentation requirements that Sophia had proposed herself. Everything was moving. Everything was by any measurable standard, under control. She told herself she was driving 40 miles to return the business card in person, because she had something to say that deserved to be said face to face. She was aware, somewhere under that this was not entirely true. She found the shop on the north end of a commercial strip between a tire place and a family-owned diner, in a building that was clean and functional and completely unpretentious, in the way that places are when the person running them has no interest in performing anything other than the work. There was a hand-painted sign above the bay doors that said Carter Auto and Service in dark blue letters, and 2 cars visible inside in various states of attention, and the sound of something mechanical and purposeful happening within. She pulled into the lot, and sat in the Range Rover for a moment. Then she got out. A man she didn't recognize, young, maybe mid-20s, with a shop rag hanging from his back pocket, came out of the front office and gave her car the instinctive, appraising look of someone whose job involved cars. "Help you? I'm looking for Nathan Carter." "Bay 2, he said, already walking back toward the office. "He's got his hands in something, but you can holler." She walked toward Bay 2. Nathan was underneath a truck. She could see his legs extended from under the vehicle. Work boots, the particular stillness of a person in focused concentration. She stopped a few feet away. "Nathan," she said. The stillness broke. There was a controlled, unhurried movement, and then he slid out from under the truck on a wheeled board, sat up, and looked at her. He was wearing a gray work shirt with his name on the pocket. His hands were occupied with a wrench and a shop rag. He had a streak of something dark along his left forearm. He looked, in his own environment, completely and entirely like himself, without the slightly too formal blazer, without the charity event energy, without any of the discomfort that a man feels when he's been placed somewhere he doesn't belong. He looked like a man who belonged exactly where he was. He looked at her for a moment, not surprised, not performing unsurprise, just taking in the fact of her being there. "Range Rover making sounds," he said. "No, okay," he stood, wiped his hands on the rag. "Then come inside, I'll put coffee on." She followed him into the small front office, which had 2 chairs, a battered desk, a coffee maker that had been used extensively, and recently, and a framed drawing on the wall that had clearly been made by a child, a car in blue crayon, with the words, "Daddy's Shop," written underneath in the careful, deliberate lettering of someone who had recently learned how. She looked at the drawing while he poured coffee. "Emma," she said. "She was 6, he said. It's been up there since. The guys give me grief about it." He handed her a mug. "I don't care." Sophia accepted the mug and sat in one of the chairs. Nathan leaned against the desk rather than sitting behind it, a posture that said this was conversation, not meeting. "The board situation," he said. "How's it sitting? Moving forward?" "Cho's lawyers are doing what lawyers do. The investigation will take time." She held the mug with both hands. "The deal is back on. Good. The Harmon Group's lead contact told me privately that what persuaded him to stay was that I called him directly, that I didn't manage the situation from a distance." She paused. "That was your advice. I didn't give you advice. I listened to you figure it out, Nathan." She looked at him directly, stopped deflecting the credit. He was quiet for a moment. Then, almost despite himself, fair. "I drove 40 miles to say thank you in person," she said, "which I recognize is unusual behavior for a woman who has a staff, whose job description includes thanking people on her behalf." "It is a little unusual," he agreed. "I also drove 40 miles because," she stopped, looked at the mug in her hands, then back at him, "because the last 3 weeks have been the most professionally dangerous weeks of my career. And the person I called when I needed to think was you. And I'm still not entirely sure why, and that is not a feeling I'm accustomed to." Nathan looked at her for a long, level moment. "How long has it been since you let yourself not know something?" he asked. "I don't follow." "You know what you don't follow," he said. "Not unkind, just honest. How long has it been since you sat with a question about yourself and didn't immediately try to answer it?" Sophia opened her mouth, closed it. "A while," she said finally. "Yeah," he said. "I thought so." He pushed off the desk and refilled his own mug, and the silence between them was the kind that had room in it, not empty, not awkward, just spacious, the way a room feels when 2 people in it aren't performing for each other. "My wife used to say," Nathan said, his back still slightly turned, his voice measured, "that I was the most patient person she'd ever met. She meant it as a compliment. I took it as one." He turned back. "But it's not really patience. It's just I learned early on that most things reveal themselves if you wait long enough with pushing. Cars, people, problems." He paused. "You've been pushing your whole life. That's not wrong. That's how you built what you built. But somewhere in the pushing, you forgot how to wait." Sophia held his gaze. "You've known me for 3 weeks," she said. "I've known you for 3 weeks," he agreed. "But I've watched you make 4 major decisions under pressure in that time. And every one of them was right. And every one of them cost you something, because you made them alone." He sat down in the other chair, which put them at the same level, which she suspected was not accidental. You don't have to do it alone. The air in the small office was warm from the coffee and the ambient heat of the shop beyond, and outside she could hear the ordinary sounds of mechanical work continuing without pause. And Sophia sat in the middle of all of it and felt something that she could only describe as the experience of a wall she'd built, deciding, quietly, to stop holding. I don't know how to do it any other way, she said. I know, Nathan said. That's the whole thing. His phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at it, a quick, involuntary parental reflex. Emma? Sophia asked. School pickup reminder. I have it set 2 hours early because I once lost track of time on a transmission rebuild and arrived 17 minutes late, and Emma looked at me like I hadn't the concept of punctuality. He looked up. She's very precise about time. She sounds like someone else I know. She sounds exactly like her mother, he said. And there was the shift again, that small, visible deepening in his expression. Not grief, exactly. Something older than grief. Something that had been carried long enough to be familiar. Sarah was a scheduler. Had everything planned 3 weeks out. Emma got it from her. He paused. Emma doesn't remember much about her. She was 4, but she kept things, the personality things. The details. Sophia set down her mug. Does that help, seeing Sarah in her? He thought about it. Really thought about it, the way he did. Yeah, he said, it helps. And sometimes it catches you completely off guard at 7 in the morning when you're just trying to get through breakfast. He shook his head. Life doesn't let you prepare for everything. You just have to be present enough to catch it. Sophia looked at him. I want to meet her, she said. It came out before she'd decided to say it. Nathan looked at her careful reading. That's a significant thing to say, he said. I know. Emma doesn't, he paused. I don't bring people into her space unless it's real. She's 9. She's perceptive and she's already lost one important person. I won't let someone come close and then leave. Sophia nodded. That's the right answer. I know it is. His eyes stayed on hers. Are you saying it's real? The question hung in the warm air of the small office. Sophia, who had built a company on precision and never said anything she hadn't calculated, looked at Nathan Carter and said the only honest thing available to her. I'm saying I drove 40 miles on a Tuesday morning to talk to you, and it's the most purposeful thing I've done this week. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Saturday. There's a farmer's market Emma likes. She'll talk your ear off about astronomy and make you try every sample at every booth. It's a full commitment. I have a board debrief Saturday morning. Move it. Sophia looked at him. You're very bossy, she said, for someone who just said he's not going to push things. Farmer's market isn't pushing, he said. It's fruit samples and a 9-year-old. Very low stakes. She almost smiled. Saturday, she said. He nodded. Outside, the work continued. Somewhere in that sound was the life Nathan Carter had built, steady, real, unglamorous in all the right ways. And Sophia sat in the middle of it and didn't rush toward the exit, which was, for her, the equivalent of a revolution. She stayed for another hour. It was the best hour she'd had in months. And that fact, she thought, driving back toward the city with the afternoon sun in her mirrors, was the most important piece of information she'd received all week, including everything from the lawyers, including everything from the board. This one, she intended to do something about. Saturday arrived the way good things sometimes do, quickly, before she'd had time to talk herself out of them. Sophia changed clothes 3 times. She was aware of doing this and found it annoying. She wore, finally, jeans she'd owned for a year without wearing, and a jacket that was not a work jacket, and shoes that were not designed for a boardroom, and she drove to the address. Nathan had texted her at 8 in the morning. He was already there when she arrived, standing near the entrance to the outdoor market, hands in his jacket pockets, and beside him was Emma. Sophia saw Emma from across the parking lot, and something happened to her chest. Emma Carter was small for 9. Or maybe she just seemed small, standing next to her father with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that was already slightly off-center, wearing a purple jacket and carrying a reusable tote bag that had a print of the solar system on it. She was talking to Nathan with her whole body, hands moving, head tilting with the absolute conversational commitment of someone who has not yet learned to be self-conscious yet. She looked up when Sophia approached. Her eyes were sharp and dark, and evaluating in the same completely unguarded way. A child evaluates something new, not unkind, just honest. "You're the hotel lady," Emma said. Sophia glanced at Nathan. "That's how she refers to you," he said. "The hotel lady," Sophia repeated. "Dad said you run a lot of hotels." Emma looked at her with the directness of someone who had not yet developed social filters. "Do you get to stay in them for free?" "I do. Which one's the best?" "That's a complicated question. Pick one." Sophia considered. "We have a property in San Francisco, 19th floor. The city looks like a map from up there." Emma processed this. "I want to see a city that looks like a map." "Emma," Nathan said. "What? I'm just saying. You just met her. She said she'd pick one," Emma said with the unassailable logic of 9 years old. She looked back at Sophia. "Did you bring comfortable shoes?" "Dad says the market has a lot of ground." Sophia looked down at her shoes. "Reasonably comfortable," she said. "Those have a heel, a small heel." Emma considered the heel with genuine concern. "You can borrow my extra socks if your feet hurt." "I always bring extra socks." "That's very practical." "Dad says I'm practical." She looked satisfied. "Okay, come on. There's a honey booth at the far end, and they give you a lot of samples if you seem interested." She headed into the market. Nathan looked at Sophia. "She always leads," he said. "I noticed. It's not a character flaw." "No," Sophia said, watching Emma navigate the crowd with the complete confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. "It's a gift." They walked. Emma moved through the market with the particular focus of a child who knew what she wanted and had a plan for getting it, working through the stalls methodically, asking questions of vendors with a directness that made adults simultaneously startled and charmed, accumulating samples and opinions and information with equal enthusiasm. She held a running commentary on everything. The astronomy book she was reading, and what she thought about black holes, the unfairness of book reports in general, and Charlotte's Web in particular, because books that make you cry should not also require a 5-paragraph response. The correct way to arrange a bookshelf, which was by color, a position she defended with genuine rigor when Sophia suggested that alphabetical had its merits. "Alphabetical is practical," Emma said. "Color is beautiful. Beautiful is better." "That depends on what you're trying to do," Sophia said. "What are you trying to do when you look at a bookshelf?" "Find a book." "No," Emma said patiently, as though explaining something obvious. "You're trying to feel like you're in the right place. You find the book after." Sophia looked at her. "Where did you get that?" she said. "I figured it out," Emma said, and moved on to the next booth with complete tranquility. Nathan, walking just behind them both, caught Sophia's eye over Emma's head. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The look on his face said, "I know. I live with this. Isn't it something?" It was something. They stopped at the honey booth. Emma was right. The vendor gave generous samples to anyone who appeared genuinely interested, and Emma's interest was the most genuine thing in the building. She tried 4 varieties with the focused seriousness of a professional taster, and gave the vendor her analysis of each one, which the vendor received with visible delight. "She's very good," the vendor told Nathan. "She knows," Nathan said. Emma accepted this as the straightforward truth that it was. They ate lunch at a picnic table, near the center of the market sandwiches. From a vendor Emma had approved in advance, and the conversation moved easily between the 3 of them, in a way that Sophia found quietly astonishing. She was accustomed to conversations that required management, that had agendas and stakes and outcomes. This one just went where it went. Emma drove most of it. Nathan contributed steadily. Sophia found herself speaking honestly and without calculation in the way she only seemed to do around these 2 people. At one point, Emma looked up from her sandwich and said, "Do you have kids?" "No," Sophia said. "Emma," Nathan said. "It's a regular question," Emma said. "It's a personal question." "Same thing." Sophia shook her head slightly at Nathan. "I was very busy building my company," she said to Emma. "I thought that was enough." Emma processed this. "Was it?" Sophia held the question for a moment. "No," she said. Emma nodded, as though this confirmed something she'd already suspected. "Dad says the most important things are the ones that can't be scheduled." She took a bite of her sandwich. "He's right about most things." "Don't tell him I said that." Nathan kept his expression completely neutral. "I won't," Sophia said. Emma looked between them. She was 9 years old and perceptive in the way of children who have spent a lot of time with adults who have learned to read a room because the rooms they grow up in are adult room and understanding them is survival. You like each other, she said. Emma, I'm not saying anything bad. She looked at her father. It's obvious. You use a different voice when you talk to her. Nathan was quiet. Emma looked at Sophia. He uses a different voice when he talks to people he actually trusts. Most people get the regular voice. It's nice. Just different. Sophia looked at Nathan. He was looking at his sandwich. Emma, he said. Finish your food. I'm just saying what I see. I know. Finish your food. Emma finished her food without any appearance of embarrassment. Because she had said a true thing and true things, in her worldview, required no apology. But Sophia sat with it. A different voice. She thought about the phone calls at night. The way his voice settled into something quieter, when the conversation moved away from logistics and toward the real. She had noticed it. She hadn't named it. Emma had named it in 14 words at a picnic table in front of a honey booth. She was 9 years old. She was remarkable. The afternoon turned cooler, and Emma found a booth selling small telescopes, inexpensive handheld, and asked Nathan if she could use her allowance to buy one. He said yes. She negotiated the price with the vendor, who was so entertained by the process that he gave her a small discount. She accepted the discount graciously and thanked him with genuine warmth. Walking back to the cars, Emma fell into step beside Sophia while Nathan stopped to take a call from the shop. Can I ask you something? Emma said. Yes, Sophia said. Is it hard, being in charge of a lot of people? Sophia thought about it honestly. Sometimes. The hard part isn't the decisions. The hard part is, she paused. The hard part is remembering that the people you're deciding about are real, that they have their own picnic tables and their own kids and their own things they care about. Emma looked up at her. Dad always says that's the whole point of everything. The people. He's right. He says a thing isn't worth building if it doesn't make someone's life better. Emma looked at the small telescope in her tote bag. Is your company making people's lives better? Sophia thought about the hospitality training program. The scholarship fund highlighted at the gala. 9,000 employees in 12 states. I'm trying, she said. I think I'm trying harder than I was a month ago. Emma seemed to consider this a sufficient answer. Good, she said. And then, with the transition speed of a child moving on to the next thing, Saturn has rings made of ice. I looked it up. Can you imagine? Ice rings around a whole planet. I can barely imagine it, Sophia said. Me neither, Emma said happily. That's why I like space. It's full of things that are too big to imagine. Nathan rejoined them. He looked at Emma, then at Sophia, reading the ease between them, the way he read most things carefully, without making a production of it. At the cars, Emma said her goodbyes with the formal warmth of someone who has decided to approve of a person. You should come back, she told Sophia. Next Saturday they have a plant booth. I need someone with good taste to help me pick one for my window. Emma, Nathan said. What? I'm being friendly. You're scheduling her. She said she was bad at not being scheduled. Emma looked at Sophia. Dad told me. Sophia looked at Nathan. Did he? She said. He had the expression of a man who had been mildly outmaneuvered by a 9-year-old and was not entirely unhappy about it. I may have mentioned, he said. Sophia looked back at Emma. Next Saturday, she said. Emma smiled her father's smile, she realized. The same thing that happened when something landed right. Emma climbed into the truck, and Nathan walked Sophia to the Range Rover. They stood at the driver's door for a moment. She's extraordinary, Sophia said. I know, he said simply. She has your instincts. She has better ones, he paused. Thank you for today. She doesn't a brief stop. She doesn't warm up to people quickly. Hasn't since she was small. She warmed up to you. Sophia felt something in her chest that she didn't have a precise name for. It was warm and slightly terrifying. The way things are when they matter. Nathan, she said. Yeah, I don't know how to do this slowly. He looked at her. He knew exactly what she meant. I know, he said. But Emma's 9, which means I need it to be slow. I understand, do you? She held his gaze. I'm learning. He nodded once, the same nod from the charity gala, the one that meant he'd heard her, the one that was a kind of promise. Next Saturday, he said. Next Saturday, she agreed. She got in the car. She drove back toward the city. She was 20 minutes down the highway when her phone rang. Priya, about a development in the Cho investigation that required her attention. Something from the outside counsel that had turned up in the document audit. Something significant. Sophia answered, and the professional part of her came back online immediately, clean and functional, and she ran through the new information with her usual precision. But under all of it, something was different skint. She was thinking about a 9-year-old with a solar system tote bag and strong opinions about bookshelves. She was thinking about the particular voice Nathan used with people he trusted. She was thinking about the fact that for the first time in 15 years, she was building something without a blueprint, and that it didn't terrify her the way it should have. That, she thought, was the most significant development of the week. By a very wide margin, Priya was still talking. Sophia refocused, made the necessary decisions, said the necessary things. But she was smiling, very slightly. In the privacy of her car on a highway outside Chicago, with the afternoon moving toward evening and the city coming up in the distance. She was smiling, and it was the kind of smile that stays, the kind that means something. The document that changed everything arrived on a Wednesday at 11:47 in the morning. Priya brought it in without knocking, which she only did when something couldn't wait, and set it on Sophia's desk with the careful precision of someone placing an object they did not want to be associated with. Outside counsel sent this 20 minutes ago, Priya said. They found it in the document audit. It was in a subfolder inside Cho's archived emails. The folder was labeled with a project code that didn't match any active initiative. Sophia picked it up. She read the first page, then she read it again. It was an internal memo authored 14 months ago, distributed to 3 recipients, whose email addresses she recognized immediately. Cho, a name she didn't know, and Marcus Webb. The subject line read, Whitmore Valuation and Acquisition Pathway Confidential. It was not a spontaneous betrayal. It was not a reaction to the international deal, or the charity gala, or anything that had happened in the last 2 months. It was 14 months old. They had been planning this for over a year. Sophia set the document down on the desk and was very still for approximately 10 seconds. The third recipient, she said. The name I don't recognize. Our legal team identified her this morning. Her name is Claire Voss. She's a managing partner at Kronfeld Hospitality's North American Advisory Group. She's been inside the planning from the beginning. From the beginning, Priya confirmed. Before you announced the international expansion publicly, before the board vote, the memo references internal financial projections from 12 months before the announcement. Sophia looked up. Which means someone gave them our internal numbers a year ago. Yes, before the distribution list we identified. Before the report we traced. The legal team believes there was a second information source. Someone with longer-term access. Sophia stood up and walked to the window. The city was below her, going about its business, entirely indifferent to the fact that someone's IR company had been working against her for 14 months with the patience and precision of a long game. Who else had access to those projections a year ago, she said. Priya was quiet for 1 second too long. Sophia turned around. Who, Priya? The legal team has narrowed it to 3 people, based on system access logs from that period. Priya's voice was carefully neutral. One of them is Daniel Park. The name landed in the room like something thrown. Daniel Park, her CFO, 8 years with the company. The man who had sat across from her in the closed conference room 3 weeks ago and said, without hesitation, I'll have the audit pulled by morning. The man she had looked in the eye and asked if he was with her. The man who had said yes. Sophia turned back to the window. Get me outside counsel on the phone, she said. And get me Daniel's full access log for the last 18 months. Don't tell Daniel. Yes. A pause. Sophia. Don't. Priya stopped. I know what you're going to say, Sophia said. I know. Just get me the phone. She stood at the window alone after Priya left, and she thought about the fact that she had spent 20 years being careful about who she trusted, about how close she let people get, about the walls she maintained, because she understood, better than most people, the specific of being wrong about someone. And she had still been wrong. For 14 months, she thought about Nathan, about the conversation in his shop office, the warm mug in her hands, him leaning against the desk saying, Sometimes the question is the thing. She picked up her phone. She put it down. She picked it up again and called him. He answered on the second ring. I've got a car on the lift. Give me 30 seconds. The sound of movement. A door. Then his voice closer, clearer. Okay. What happened? She told him in 4 sentences. He was quiet for a moment. The CFO, he said, possibly. We don't know yet. But your gut. She closed her eyes. My gut says. Okay. His voice was steady. Completely steady. How long ago did he have access to the information? 14 months. And 3 weeks ago, he sat in a meeting with you and told you he was with you. Yes. Nathan was quiet for 1 second, Sophia. That means when you walked into that boardroom last week and laid everything out, he already knew what you had. He knew you were going to do it. Sophia felt it click into place. He let me walk in there, she said. Why would he do that unless what I had wasn't enough to stop the full play? She was already moving, already thinking, her mind running ahead of the conversation. The boardroom confrontation stopped Cho and Webb. But if Daniel is the deeper source, the one who had access before any of this started, then removing Cho and Webb doesn't end it. It just removes the front layer. There's something else, Nathan said. I know. If he let you make the boardroom move, and it didn't stop him, he's not scared of you. That means he has something else. Something I don't know about yet. Yeah. Sophia pulled herself back from the edge of the spiral that was opening in front of her. She recognized it, the particular pull of crisis that wanted to take her under if she let emotional before she made it tactical. Tell me something ordinary, she said. A pause. What? Tell me something ordinary, Emma. The shop. Anything. He understood immediately. She heard him exhale. Emma decided this morning that she's going to learn Morse code, he said. She has no practical use for it, she knows that. She's doing it anyway, because she thinks it would be useful if there was ever an emergency where speaking wasn't possible. She's 9. She's planning for contingencies. I told her that was smart, she said. She knew. A pause. She also told me to tell you, she found a plant for her window at the farmer's market, but she's not going to tell you what it is until Saturday, because it's a surprise. Something in Sophia's chest unlocked by about 2 degrees. I'll be there Saturday, she said. I know. His voice was quiet. Handle what you need to handle. Be careful, Nathan. Yeah, thank you for answering. Always, he said. She hung up. She stood straight. She called her lawyers. The next 48 hours moved in the particular compressed way of a crisis that has shifted from defense to offense. Outside counsel confirmed by Thursday morning, Daniel Park's access credentials had been used to download 4 batches of internal financial documents over a 14-month period. The downloads were disguised within normal workflow actions embedded in routine reporting exports, timed to coincide with quarterly cycles when large document movements were expected and less likely to trigger security flags. It was professional. It was patient. It was the work of someone who understood the system from the inside, because they had helped build it. What outside counsel also found buried 3 levels deep in an anonymized consulting contract associated with Claire Voss's advisory group was a performance clause, a clause that promised a significant fee upon successful completion of the Whitmore acquisition, a clause with Daniel Park's initials in the amendment log. He wasn't just a source, he was a participant. Sophia received this information on Thursday afternoon. She was sitting in a private conference room with 2 lawyers and Priya when they walked on her through it. She heard all of it. She asked specific questions. She made specific decisions. She did not raise her voice once. When the lawyers left, Priya looked at her carefully. How are you? Priya said, which was not something she normally asked. I'm functional, Sophia said. That's not what I asked. Sophia looked at her assistant, 29 years old, efficient to the point of being nearly robotic, sitting across from her with something in her face that was unmistakably genuine concern. I'm angry, Sophia said honestly. I'm angry in a way that wants to be loud, and I'm not going to let it be loud yet. Because loud doesn't help right now. Priya nodded. What do you need? I need you to schedule a one-on-one with Daniel for tomorrow morning at 8. Tell him. It's a routine budget alignment for the Harmon documentation. Normal, routine, nothing to trigger. Priya's expression didn't change. Do you want legal present? Not visibly, but present. Adjacent, Sophia said. Conference room B. They'll be in the room next door. Priya stood. Done. She started toward the door, then stopped. Sophia. For what it's worth, I've been with you for 4 years. I know what this company is, and I know what you are. She paused. Don't let them make you forget that. Sophia looked at her for a moment. Thank you, Priya, she said. And she meant it in a way that went beyond the transaction. Friday morning at 8 o'clock, Daniel Park walked into the conference room. With a coffee cup and a tablet, and the practiced ease of a man who had done nothing wrong and was not thinking about the fact that he had done everything wrong. Sophia was already there. She was sitting with one folder on the table in front of her closed. She looked at him when he came in. She let him sit down. She let him settle, open his tablet, take a sip of his coffee. She let him feel for approximately 15 seconds, like this was a normal meeting. Then she opened the folder and she placed the consulting contract with his initials on the amendment log directly in front of him. Daniel Park looked at the document. He didn't say anything. He didn't move for 3 full seconds. Then he set his coffee cup down. Sophia, don't, she said. Her voice was level, not cold level. There is a difference, and she knew exactly which one she was using. Don't open with my name and a long pause. I've been in enough conversations this month to recognize what comes after that, and I don't have patience for it today. He closed his mouth. 14 months, she said. The initial download was 14 months ago. March, first week, the quarterly cycle. You used a report export wrapper to disguise it. Very clean. She looked at him. I'm telling you the detail because I want you to understand that we have all of it. There's no version of this where the detail matters to your outcome. I'm telling you because I built something and you were inside it for 8 years, and you spent the last 14 months taking it apart from the inside, and I think you should have to sit with the specific shape of what you did. Daniel's face had gone through 3 things in quick succession: shock, calculation, and then something that was almost the beginning of something honest. The company was never going to survive the international expansion, he said. His voice was controlled but thinner than it had been. The projections were too aggressive. You were over-leveraged and you couldn't see it because you'd never been wrong about a major move before, and this one was wrong. Is that what you told yourself? It's what I believed. Then you should have told me. She kept her voice even. 8 years. You had 8 years of access to my ear. 8 years of quarterly reviews and late nights and conversations that had nothing to do with work. You could have sat across from me any one of those days and said, Sophia, I think the expansion model is wrong. Here is why. I would have listened. I would have pushed back. We would have fought about it. And then I would have either changed my mind or explained why you were wrong. She paused. Instead, you went to Kronfeld. He said nothing. Why? She said. Because you don't actually listen, he said. And there it was, the real thing. Sudden and raw. And clearly something he had held for a long time. You perform listening. You take input, you make it look considered, and then you do exactly what you decided to do before the conversation started. I've watched you do it for 8 years. Sophia held that. She didn't refute it immediately. She sat with it the way Nathan had taught her, without pushing. And in the sitting, she found something that was uncomfortable. He was not entirely wrong. Maybe, she said. Maybe that's true some of the time. Maybe more of the time than I'd like. She kept her eyes on his. That doesn't justify what you did. To me, or to 9,000 people whose jobs exist because of what I built. He looked at the table. The lawyers are next door, she said. You know that already, because you're smart enough to have expected it. She stood. I'm not going to ask you anything else. You'll be asked plenty by people better positioned to ask it. She picked up the folder. I just needed you to know that I know. Not through a legal document or a second-hand briefing. From me in person, in this room, she paused at the door. Because you were important to this company for a long time, Daniel. And I think you deserve to hear it from the person you actually wronged. She opened the door. The lawyers were there. She handed the folder to the lead counsel and walked down the hall and into her office and closed the door and stood alone in the room for 60 seconds. Then she sat down. Then she cried, briefly, cleanly, the kind of crying that is not grief exactly, but is the body releasing something that has been held at pressure for too long. Then she washed her face, reapplied what needed reapplying, and picked up the phone. Not to call Nathan, Not yet. She called Patricia Anand, the board member, who had made the quiet decision that mattered in the boardroom 3 weeks ago. It's Sophia, she said. I need 30 minutes today. I've found the rest of it. I'll clear my afternoon, Patricia said immediately. Saturday arrived. Emma was waiting at the farmer's market with the solar system tote bag and what appeared to be significant excitement about the plant situation. She had found, she explained immediately upon seeing Sophia, a small succulent with purple edges that was, quote, exactly the right amount of difficult to take care of because it needs attention, but not too much attention, which Emma considered to be the ideal quality in a living thing. Sophia said, that sounded like exactly the right plant. Emma looked at her carefully. You look tired, she said. Nathan said. She does. It's not an insult. It's fine, Sophia said. I am tired. Did something hard happen at work? Yes. Emma considered this with the directness that Sophia had come to understand was simply her mode of operating. Dad says hard things at work feel personal, but they're usually just problems in disguise. And problems have answers. Your dad is right, Sophia said. He usually is, Emma said. About work stuff. About other stuff he's still figuring out. She looked at Nathan with the candor of someone who had no idea she was being devastating. Like feelings. Nathan's expression was the picture of a man who had accepted that his 9-year-old daughter was going to say the truest things in any given conversation, and there was nothing he could do about it. Feelings, Sophia said. He's better at them now than he was, Emma said charitably. He's learning. She headed toward the plant booth. Come on, I'll show you the succulent. They followed her. Nathan fell into step beside Sophia. Their arms were close enough that she could feel the warmth of him beside her without either of them having to make a thing of it. She's not wrong, he said quietly. About which part? Any of it. Sophia looked at the back of Emma's purple jacket moving ahead of them through the market. She told me last week that you use a different voice with people you trust, Sophia said. I know. She told me she told you. What did you say to her? I said she was observant. A pause, she said she knows. Sophia almost smiled. Nathan, she said. Yeah, something happened this week. With my CFO, it's a significant thing, and when I found out, the first call I made was to you. Not to my lawyers, not to the board, you. He was quiet for a moment. I know. You called from the window. I could tell you were at the shop. I was, car on the lift. He glanced at her sideways. I would have put the car down. She looked at him. I know. They walked in the easy silence of two people who had become, without either of them scheduling it, essential to each other's thinking. Essential to each other's breathing room. Essential in the particular way that is different from useful or convenient, the way that is about the actual texture of a day, feeling different when a person is in it. At the plant booth, Emma presented the succulent, with the formality of someone completing a significant transaction. This one, she said. Sophia looked at it, small, purple-edged, in a simple clay pot. Tell me why this one, she said. Emma was visibly pleased to have been asked. Because it's small, but it's not delicate, she said. It stores what it needs, and it doesn't ask for more than that. And the purple means it's been in enough sun to show its real color. She looked at Sophia. Dad says things that have been through a lot sometimes turn out to be the most beautiful. Sophia looked at Nathan. He was looking at the ground with the expression of a man who knew his daughter had just said something profound while describing a succulent at a farmer's market and didn't quite know what to do with it. He's right about that too, Sophia said. She bought the plant. Emma carried it carefully the rest of the morning, explaining to it quietly, conversationally what its new life would involve. That afternoon, after Emma fell asleep in the truck on the drive back from the market, Nathan and Sophia sat in the parking lot of the diner near his shop and talked for an hour. Really talked. She told him everything. Daniel, the 14 months, the boardroom, the 60 seconds of crying in her office. She told him the part she hadn't told her lawyers, or Patricia or Priya, the part where Daniel had said she only performed listening, and the part where she had sat with that and found something uncomfortable and true in it. Nathan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You know what I think? He said. Tell me. I think you've been so focused on proving you deserve what you built that you forgot to trust that you'd built it right. He looked out the windshield at the parking lot. The people who came after you, Daniel, All of them, they were counting on that. On you being so busy defending the perimeter that you'd miss what was happening inside. Sophia let that land. And what stops it from happening again? She said. He turned to look at her directly. You stop pretending that doing it alone is a strength, he said. It's a habit, and habits aren't the same as virtues, even when they've kept you safe. She looked at him for a long moment. You said something to me at the gala, she said. The first night. You said a person can own everything and still feel empty if nobody truly knows them. I remember. I've thought about that sentence almost every day since. Yeah? Yeah. She paused. I think the reason it stayed with me is that it was the first thing anyone had said to me in years. That wasn't about my company, or my decisions, or my position. It was just about me as a person. Nathan nodded slowly. You are a person, he said, underneath all of it. I know. I've just not led with that. You don't have to lead with it for everyone. But you do have to lead with it for the people who matter. Sophia looked at him, at the steady, unhurried face of a man who had survived real loss and raised a brilliant child on the other side of it and run a modest business with integrity, and still had the capacity to sit across from a woman who had been built like a fortress and say things that found the cracks. Nathan, she said, yeah, I'm falling for you. I don't know what else to call it. The parking lot was quiet around them. In the back seat, Emma slept with the succulent plant on her lap, one hand curled around the edge of the pot. Nathan looked at Sophia. I know, he said. You're not surprised. No, is that she paused. Are you is this Sophia? He said her name the way he said most things, simply directly, without ornament. I put the car down. She looked at him. When you called from the window, he said. I had a car on the lift. When my phone rang and I saw your name, I stopped what I was doing and I put the car down. He held her gaze. I don't put a car down for things that aren't real. Sophia felt the last wall, the one she'd been maintaining on some level through all of this. The professional distance, the managed engagement, she felt it stop being a wall. She didn't cry this time. She just let it go. I don't know how to do this, she said. A relationship. Something real. I haven't. I don't have a track record. I don't need your track record, he said. I need you to show up. To Emma, to me, to whatever this is. He paused. Can you do that? She thought about the plant booth and the picnic table and the extra socks Emma offered the first day they met. She thought about midnight phone calls and the specific quality of Nathan's voice. When the conversation stopped being logistics and became real, she thought about the way she'd felt driving back from the first Saturday at the farmer's market, smiling in her car on the highway. Yes, she said, I can do that. In the back seat, Emma stirred. She opened her eyes, saw the two of them sitting in the front, talking quietly, and, with the complete tranquility of someone who found this arrangement entirely correct, closed her eyes again. The plant stayed firmly in her lap. Nathan and Sophia looked at each other, and something that had started as a joke, an arrangement made by people with small intentions, and a certain brand of cruelty they called humor became, in the quiet of a parking lot on a Saturday afternoon, something else entirely. Something without a name yet. Something real. Something worth showing up for. Every day for a very long time. 6 months after the charity gala where 400 people watched and waited for a joke to land, Sophia Whitmore stood in front of her entire executive leadership team and said something none of them had ever heard her say before. I was wrong, she said, about a number of things. And I want to start there. The room was completely still. Not the performative stillness of people trying to look attentive. The real stillness of people who were surprised and were not hiding it. Priya, seated at the far end of the table, kept her expression neutral, but her pen stopped moving. Sophia had prepared for this moment. The way she prepared for everything thoroughly was specifically, without leaving the important parts to instinct. But standing in front of them now, she found that the prepared version and the real version were slightly different, and she chose the real version. I built this company with a specific belief, she said. That strength meant self-sufficiency, that needing people was a liability, that the more I could do alone, the more secure everything would be. She paused. What I actually built, operating from that belief, was a company that was vulnerable in the exact places I thought I'd protected. Because the people closest to me knew I didn't fully trust them, and some of them decided that if they were going to be treated like risks, They might as well be risks. She let that land. The events of the last 6 months, the investigation, the legal process, what we found and who we found it with, they're not just a story about betrayal. They're a story about the culture I created by accident while building the culture I intended. She looked around the table. That changes today, not with a policy memo. With how I run this room every week from now on. Patricia Anand, who had been on the board for 9 years and had seen Sophia in dozens of high-stakes moments, looked at her with something that was close to wonder. The room exhaled. Not relieved, not convinced. Something more complicated, the sound of people who had been told the truth by someone who didn't have to tell it, trying to figure out what to do with that. After the meeting, a woman named Joy Okafor stopped Sophia in the hallway. Joy ran the company's mid-tier property operations, 62 hotels across 7 states, a team of 412 years with the company. She was not someone who normally approached Sophia in hallways. "Ms. Whitmore," Joy said. Sophia stopped. "Joy, I've been with this company for 12 years. Joy's voice was measured, careful, but her eyes were direct. "I've watched you run it for 8 of those. And I want to say what you said in there. I've been waiting to hear something like that for a long time." Sophia looked at her. "Why didn't you say something?" Sophia said. Joy gave her a look that was patient and honest and slightly tired. "Because you made it very clear, in the way you ran every room you were in, that the conversation was already decided." She paused. "You just told us that's changing." "I wanted you to know that I heard you." Sophia held her gaze. "I heard you too," she said. "Both things." Joy nodded. She went back to her day. Sophia stood in the hallway for a moment longer than she normally would have. She was thinking about Daniel Park's words, "You perform listening," and the fact that Joy Okafor had just confirmed them from a completely different direction. She was also thinking about the way Nathan had said, in the parking lot on Saturday, "Habits aren't the same as virtues, even when they've kept you safe." She took her phone out and typed him a text. "It's working. I'll tell you tonight," he replied. 4 minutes later, "Good. Emma wants to know if you're coming Sunday. She's been plotting something with that plant." Sophia typed back, "Tell her yes." She put the phone away and went back to work. But something in the day felt different. Lighter. Like a window had been opened in a room that had been closed too long. The legal proceedings against Richard Cho and Daniel Park moved forward with the particular grinding momentum of institutional justice, slower than Sophia would have chosen. More procedural than she found satisfying, but thorough. Outside counsel projected a resolution within the year. Both men had retained lawyers. Neither had reached out to Sophia personally, which she considered the most honest thing either of them had done. Marcus Webb's role was murkier. His lawyers argued he had been a passive participant, that his firm's pullback from the deal had been legitimate business judgment, that his only mistake was association. Sophia's lawyers disagreed. The truth, as truths often did, was probably somewhere between the two positions. She didn't spend energy on Marcus that she needed for other things. She let the lawyers do what lawyers do. What she spent energy on was the work she had promised herself in that hallway after Joy Okafor walked away. She created a direct feedback channel, not a suggestion box, not an anonymous survey, but a structured monthly forum where team leads at every level of the company could bring real problems to real people who had real authority to address them. She appointed Joy Okafor to run it. She attended every session herself for the first 3 months. She created a scholarship program for children of Whitmore Hotel employees, full tuition, 4-year universities, no restrictions on field of study. She funded the first year out of her personal account before the company's philanthropic budget cycle caught up. She hired a new CFO from outside the hospitality industry, entirely a woman who had spent 20 years in healthcare administration, managing systems that couldn't afford the particular kind of failure that came from people in positions of trust, deciding the rules didn't apply to them. The woman's name was Margaret, and she had absolutely no patience for ambiguity, which Sophia found deeply reassuring. And she went to the Harmon Group's offices in New York on a Tuesday morning and sat across from their leadership team and told them directly what had happened inside her company and what she was doing about it. Not the version her PR team had drafted. The real version. The lead contact, a deliberate silver-haired man named Robert Finch, who had been in international hospitality for 30 years, listened to her for 40 minutes, without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Why are you telling us this? Your legal team has been managing the public narrative carefully, because you're about to enter a significant partnership with my company," Sophia said. "And you deserve to know who you're actually partnering with, not the managed version me." Robert Finch was quiet for a moment. "The expansion," he said. "Your projections. Your CFO said they were too aggressive." "My CFO was partially right," she said. "The timeline was aggressive. The market opportunity is real. I've rebuilt the financial model with my new team. I'd like you to look at it. What changed?" "I listened to people I should have listened to sooner," she said. "And I'm building a company where that's the expectation, not the exception." Robert Finch looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled a yellow legal pad from his desk drawer and clicked open a pen. "Show me the new model," he said. She showed him. 3 hours later, she walked out of the Harmon Group's offices with a revised partnership agreement, a modified timeline that was honest rather than optimistic, and the particular satisfaction of a person who has told the complete truth in a high-stakes room and had it work. She called Nathan from the street outside. "Tell Emma the hotel lady had a good day," she said. She heard him say it, muffled, away from the phone. She heard Emma's voice from somewhere in the background, bright, immediate, already moving on to the next thing. She heard Nathan come back. "She said she knew you would." "Of course she did. She's made a card," he said. "For you. She won't tell me what it says. It's in an envelope on the kitchen table." Sophia stood on a New York sidewalk in November with the city moving around her and said, "I'll be there Saturday." "She's counting on it," Nathan said. "So am I," she said. The first time Sophia had dinner at Nathan's house, Emma set the table herself. She did it with the same methodical, purposeful energy. She brought to everything the right number of forks, which she had looked up specifically, napkins folded into the shape she'd seen in a video, and practiced 3 times that afternoon. She had also, Sophia discovered upon arrival, written a small handwritten menu on a card and placed it at Sophia's seat. Nathan made pasta. He was, it turned out, genuinely good at it, the kind of good that comes from years of having to make something a child would eat while not entirely losing his own interest in the food. Sophia sat at a kitchen table for the first time in longer than she could accurately remember. Not a restaurant table with a reservation. Not a catered event with a name card. A kitchen table that had crayon marks on one corner and a slightly uneven leg that made it tilt just barely when you put your elbows on it. Emma talked through the entire meal. She had learned 17 words of Morse code and was going to explain all of them. She had decided that Charlotte's Web was actually the best book she'd ever read, but she was still angry at B. White for making her cry, and these 2 positions were not contradictory. The succulent on her windowsill had been named Gerald, after significant consideration. "Why Gerald?" Sophia asked. "Because he looks like a Gerald," Emma said, in the tone of someone for whom this was a complete explanation. Sophia looked at Nathan. Nathan looked at his pasta. "I've learned not to push on these things," he said. After dinner, Emma disappeared to do homework with the specific kind of reluctance that is also, underneath, relief, and Nathan and Sophia sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and the particular quiet of a house where a child's presence lingers, even when the child is in another room. "This is your life," Sophia said. "Yeah," he said. "It's a good life, I know," he said, not modestly, not performatively, just with the certainty of a man who had survived enough to understand the difference between a good life and an impressive one, and had chosen, deliberately, the good one. "I want to be in it," Sophia said. The kitchen was quiet. Nathan put his coffee cup down. "You are in it," he said. "You've been in it for a while. I mean, officially. Whatever that means for you." For Emma, she kept her eyes on his. "I don't mean fast, I mean real." He held her gaze for a long moment. "I know the difference," she said, "between performing something and meaning it. I've performed a lot of things for a long time." She paused. "This is not a performance." Nathan looked at her, at the woman who had walked into his life as a punchline and become, in the months since, the person he thought of first when something happened, good, bad, ordinary. The person whose name Emma said, with the easy familiarity of someone who had decided, in her own quiet 9-year-old way, that this was a permanent thing. "I know," he said. "Then yeah," he said, "real." It wasn't a dramatic moment. No one cried. Nothing cinematic happened. They were two people sitting at a kitchen table with coffee in a house that smelled like pasta and had crayon marks on one corner and a plant named Gerald on a windowsill, and they looked at each other and agreed on something true. It was, Sophia thought, the most significant conversation she had ever had, and it had taken 6 sentences. From the hallway, Emma called, "Is there dessert?" Nathan looked at the ceiling briefly. "Ice cream," he called back. "What kind? What kind do we have?" he said. Slightly lower, to Sophia. "Chocolate and strawberry," Sophia said. She had brought it. She had known, from paying attention, that those were the 2 flavors that mattered in this house. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I pay attention," she said. "Both," he called to Emma. A pause. "Good," Emma called back. They looked at each other, and then they both laughed, easy, warm, the way 2 people laugh when they have arrived. Against all reasonable expectation, somewhere they both belong. 3 months later, 9 months after the charity gala, Sophia stood at a lectern in front of an audience of 400 people and gave a speech. Different event, different room. This one was a conference hosted by a National Hospitality Association, and she had been asked to speak on business resilience. She had accepted, and had written and thrown away 3 versions of the speech before writing the 4th one, the one she actually gave. She did not talk about strategy. She did not talk about market positioning or competitive advantage or the art of navigating a crisis with executive precision. She talked about a business card. She talked about a man who shook her hand at a charity event and noticed, within 20 minutes, exactly what was happening in the room, and chose to say nothing about it until he chose to say everything. She talked about what it cost to believe that doing things alone was strength. She talked about the 9,000 people who worked for her company, and the fact that she had spent years thinking of them as an organizational chart and had learned, slowly, to think of them as what they actually were, people with kitchen tables and children and specific opinions about ice cream flavors and inner lives that deserved her attention, not just her payroll. She talked about the fact that the most important thing she had done in her career was not the first hotel or the international expansion deal or the boardroom confrontation that had made it into 3 industry publications. It was asking for help and meaning it. The audience was quiet in the way audiences are when someone is telling the truth in a room that is accustomed to performance. When she finished, a woman in the 3rd row raised her hand during the Q&A and asked, "The man you mentioned, the one with the business card. What happened to him?" Sophia looked at her. She thought about Saturday mornings and farmers markets and a plant named Gerald and the specific weight of a kitchen table where someone had set a place for her. She thought about Emma's card, which had been on the kitchen table that first dinner, the envelope she'd been handed after dessert, which she'd opened carefully to find a drawing inside. A crayon drawing of 3 figures, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with dark hair. Underneath, in Emma's deliberate, careful letters, "Our people." She had kept the card. It was in her apartment, on the kitchen counter, where the business card had sat for 9 days. Different card now, same counter. She looked at the woman in the 3rd row. "He's still there," Sophia said. "He's been there the whole time." The woman nodded. Someone else asked a different question and the Q&A moved on. But Sophia carried that answer with her, out of the room and into the elevator and out to the car where her driver was waiting. She pulled out her phone. Incoming text from Nathan, time-stamped 40 minutes ago. "Emma got 100 on her book report. She said to tell you, because you're the one she told about Charlotte's Web first." Sophia read it twice, then she typed back, "Tell her I'm proud of her. Tell her E.B. White would be too." She stared at the phone for a moment. Then she typed, "And tell her I'm coming Saturday. I found a plant for Gerald. He needs a friend." Nathan replied in 90 seconds. "She's going to have opinions about the name." Sophia typed, "I'm counting on it." She put the phone in her pocket and looked out the window as the car moved through the city. The city that she had built her company in, that she had walked through alone for 15 years. That looked different now, not the city itself, which was exactly the same, but the looking. The looking was different. Because she was different. Not fixed, not finished, not the polished, managed version of herself. that she had been performing for so long that she'd forgotten the performance was a choice. Just more honest, more present, more willing to sit at a kitchen table, with crayon marks on the corner, and mean it when she said she wanted to be there. She had spent 15 years building something she was proud of. She was still proud of it. She was going to keep building it smarter now, more honestly, with people she actually let in, rather than people she held carefully at arm's length and called a team. And she was going to drive 40 miles on Saturday mornings and bring plants and eat ice cream and listen to a 9-year-old explain the moons of Jupiter and sit across from a man who put cars down when she called and never once looked at her like she was positioned to calculate. She was going to let that be part of the story. The important part. The part that in the end turned out to be the point of all the rest of it. Diana Caldwell called her that evening. She did this sometimes called, without warning, the way she had for 17 years, with something she needed to say. "I've been thinking about the gala," Diana said, without preamble. "Which part?" "The part where I helped arrange the pairing and told myself it was for your own good when part of me thought it was funny." A pause. "That wasn't kind. I've wanted to say that for a while." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "I know," she said. "Are you angry?" No, she thought about it honestly. "I was. For about a week. And then things happened that I didn't expect. And being angry at the setup started feeling like being angry at the weather that happened to be right." Diana was quiet on the other end. "He's good for you," Diana said. "Not a question. Yes, she's good for you. She's extraordinary," Sophia said. "She named a succulent Gerald, and she knows 17 words of Morse code. And she told me, the first time we met, that beautiful is better than practical, and meant it completely." Diana made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and something softer. "I'm sorry I thought it was funny," she said, Diana. Sophia leaned back. "You accidentally introduced me to the two most important people in my life. We're past apology." "Okay," Diana said. "Good. Also," Sophia said, "the next time you decide to manage my life disguised as event planning, tell me first. That defeats the purpose. Tell me first anyway." "Fine," Diana said. "And then I'm glad, Sophia. I mean that. I'm genuinely glad." "I know you are," Sophia said. "Me too." She meant it about the gladness. She felt it in the clean, uncomplicated way that gladness feels when it isn't mixed with performance or management, or the residue of something you've been trying to prove. She was just glad, purely, simply glad. That was new. She liked it. On the last Saturday of that month, Sophia arrived at the farmer's market at 8:45 in the morning, with a plant in a small terracotta pot, a tiny jade plant she had learned, from reading, more than she expected to read about succulents, was considered good luck and was known for being resilient in conditions that would finish less determined things. She had asked the nursery owner what the jade plant's common name was. "Some people just call it the friendship plant," the owner had said. Sophia had paid for it without another word. Emma was already at the entrance with her solar system tote bag when Sophia arrived. She looked at the plant in Sophia's hands with the specific evaluating focus she brought to all important decisions. "What's its name?" she said. "I thought you should name it," Sophia said. Emma took this responsibility with complete seriousness. She looked at the plant. She turned the pot once. She looked at it from the other side. "Pauline?" she said. "Pauline," Sophia said. "She looks like a Pauline." Emma put her in the tote bag carefully, next under the bag of samples she had already procured from the first booth. "She can be Gerald's best friend." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Sophia said. Nathan arrived beside them, coffee in hand, slightly warm from jogging from the parking area, because Emma had insisted on leaving the truck before he'd finished locking it. He looked at Sophia. He looked at the tote bag holding Pauline. "New plant?" he said. "Gerald needed a friend," Sophia said. "Pauline," Emma clarified. He nodded with the expression of a man who had long since made peace with the fact that the women in his life made decisions and informed him of them. "Pauline," he said. "Good." Emma was already moving into the market. They followed her. It was a cold morning late in the year, the kind of cold that has edges, and Nathan's arm was warm beside Sophia's, and Emma was ahead of them, pointing at things, and explaining things, and being completely, extravagantly herself. And Sophia Whitmore, who had built a billion-dollar empire on the belief that she needed nothing she couldn't construct alone, who had sat in boardrooms and defended her company against people who had tried to take it apart from the inside, and who had spent 15 years walking into rooms full of people and feeling, underneath all the competence, essentially and irreversibly alone, walked through a farmer's market on a cold Saturday morning, between a man who put cars down when she called, and a 9-year-old who named plants and knew 17 words of Morse code and had drawn her into a family in crayon. And she was not alone. She was not performing not being alone. She simply, actually, genuinely was not alone. That was the thing nobody at the charity gala had seen coming. Not Marcus Webb with his tight grin. Not Richard Cho watching her reaction like a man assessing a problem. Not Diana with her slightly too careful smile and her good intentions wrapped around a moment of poor judgment. None of them had seen it. Because none of them had been looking for it. They had been looking for a joke. And what had walked into that room instead? What had sat down across from a mechanic in an ill-fitting blazer and made a choice to be real was not a punchline. It was a beginning. And beginnings, Sophia had learned, do not announce themselves. They arrive quietly, at a charity gala, with a cracked champagne glass and a stranger reading a name card. At a farmer's market, with a plant named Pauline, and a cold morning, and a child ahead of you, pointing at everything worth pointing at. In a parking lot on a Saturday afternoon, with two people telling each other the truth. That is how the most important things begin. Not with headlines. Not with boardroom confrontations, or international deals, or professional vindication. With a person who looks at you, just looks at you, without calculating anything, and you look back. And something starts. Something that, once it starts, you cannot imagine having lived your whole life without. That is what they had built. Nathan Carter and Sophia Whitmore, on the other side of a joke that was never funny. Something that would outlast the company. Something that would outlast all of it. Something that, on a cold Saturday morning, was walking ahead of them in a purple jacket, carrying a plant named Pauline, pointing at everything worth pointing at in the world. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.